There is a certain fear called phagophobia. And I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. It's P-H-A-G, phobia. We're gonna do another story time because I did a chaotic makeup look the other day where I was doing a story time. Oh no, those are two different things. The other day I was talking about how I got my braces and how I didn't eat for a year, but then I skipped right over that story and said I'll come back and do it. So why not do a story time? Will I do my makeup? You ready? You ready for it? I don't know why I always do that. I need to. So first off, we're gonna start with this primer. It is the Pure Lease BB primer. I use it whenever I can find it. You know, I Pure Lease BB primer. I use it whenever I can find it in my drawer. I've actually had this probably too long and it's gonna be expiring. So we're just gonna throw it on right there and get started with the story. This was back when I was living in LA. I just moved to Hollywood. I was off Hollywood Boulevard. And I was 20 at the time, 20. The reason I remember this is because I could not yet drink. I mark my memories by that. I don't know what happened. I really don't. One day I was just sitting at home and I think I coughed, maybe, and it was just like too hard. I don't know if this was before or after I started developing this inability to eat. Maybe some background would help. There is a certain fear called phagophobia. And I don't know if that's how it's pronounced. It's P-H-A-G, phobia. And it essentially means the fear of choking. Right around the same time both these things happened. Either this phagophobia had started to develop, or I accidentally spurred it on by coughing too hard. I know that sounds dumb, but just hear me out. One day I was sitting home alone and I coughed, right? And something gets lodged in my throat, like phlegm, and I couldn't get it out. So I was like, and like I started to get a little bit dizzy. It finally did get out, but I remember calling my dad and being like, I almost died. He also lived in LA at the time, but farther away, not close enough to save somebody from choking. You know? Next up is going to be the Revlon 5-in-1 Concealer. This is in the color 002 Corrector Serum. This was recommended to me by one of my followers. They said, get this concealer, it's really good. And I'm still on the fence about it. I don't hate it, you know, but like I'm not in love with it. Let me go get my brush. What I've heard is you want to like squeeze it out a little bit and get a goop in the corner, but don't drag it all the way across. So I call my dad and he says, well, you wouldn't die that way. He was like, you're gonna just cough and then your body would absorb the mucus back in. You might pass out, but you would absorb, and then eventually you would just wake up once it absorbed. So I was like, sounds fake, but okay, we'll let it go. But it was at that point, my memory, you know, but it was at that point where I was like, okay. Next mealtime, let's say. I was gonna go eat food, and I got it out of the fridge, and I put it in my mouth, and I was just like, no matter what I could do, I could not bring myself to swallow it. I went over to that trash can, and I spit it out. Trigger warning, by the way, this is not ED, but it is definitely disordered. So it's not ED in the way that you think of it, but it still is a little bit triggering for some people. So I would spit it out in the trash can, because I was so afraid to swallow it. I didn't know what else to do with it. I, at that point, could not get it down my throat. Tried many times, don't get me wrong. I would try to eat, chew. I already chew my food a lot. I'm an overmasticator. Boop, 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 boop. And I kept on going, and then here it goes, time to swallow, and I did. I got over the mental fear, and as soon as it hit my gag reflex, oh, I didn't know that was gonna change my voice. As soon as it hit my gag reflex, it came right back up. I could not keep food down because I got scared. I could feel it. It's like kind of how when you think about breathing, all of a sudden you're breathing super hard because you're just noticing every little thing. Or what about someone says, hey, did you know you can see your nose? Now you're gonna see your nose for 5 minutes because your brain forgets it. These are automatic responses that we're not necessarily supposed to be thinking about. You just eat because it's an instinct to eat. This starts to plague me. I am, again, 20 at the time. I was living with my boyfriend, but he was acting like a complete douche nozzle and was always out because he was 21. He'd be at the club, he'd be with his friends going out. Anywhere where I couldn't get into was where he was gonna be for days on end. So anytime I was home alone, I just wouldn't eat. And that was a lot. And it developed very, very quickly to be, even when somebody was there, when my boyfriend was home at like midnight or 2 in the morning and I attempt to eat, I couldn't do it. It's like I'd forgotten how to do it. The dizziness that came with that, the shame that came with that, because it's so weird, right? I mean, it's not like it's all, everyone has their things, but it was something I never heard of. So I started looking it up, and phagophobia apparently is not super uncommon in anyone who's ever had a trauma response, and it really only shows up in kids. They made a whole documentary on this one adult because they're like, whoa, this is so rare, because like our brains reset and it's not normal for adults. They kind of just get over their fear as it develops. Of course, me being JeGaysus has to do everything a little bit different now, don't I? So I watched a documentary and found out about this. So kids, super common because they're just scared of food at that point. And then if anyone's choked and almost died from that experience, they will have a trauma response where they have to kind of go through exposure therapy. And you gotta eat, you gotta try things, you gotta attempt to swallow. And you just keep on doing that until you can't, you know? I didn't know what to do. So at this time, my dad did put me on his insurance. I was under 26. We were able to do so. Got that open. I went to the doctor and they were just like, yeah, it's psychosomatic for sure. Like, there's nothing wrong with your throat. So what if I put you on Klonopin and then you can eat your little way away? And I'm like, what's Klonopin? They're like, it's an antipsychotic. Oh, by the way, this is e.l.f. Flawless Fat Satin Buff. It's buff. It has like a yellow undertone because I be golden, baby. Prescribed me Klonopin. She's like, it's an antipsychotic. Hopefully it would work for fears and anxiety and triggers. And once you get on it, it'll take, you know, a couple days to really get into your bloodstream. But then you should see your symptoms alleviate. Did that happen? No. A week or so into this, and I don't know if you've ever gone like a week without eating, but I was talking to my mother on the phone, and she gave me the brilliant idea of, why are you just not having anything except for whatever small particles make it down when you attempt to eat? And why don't you go to the store and get Ensure? That way you don't die. And I was like, okay. So I went to the store and got Ensure, got the big protein kind, whatever existed in 2008. They didn't have a lot of options, actually. I would use that for my meal 3 times a day. Again, not recommended. Do not do this. This is not an actual way to eat. It was really easy to take to work. At the time I was working at the Chinese theater. I just keep a cold one in my locker. You can also drink them warm. It was great. Also around the same time, Soylent had just came out and I was in awe. I was like, this is my dream. I could not afford it because living in Hollywood, working at a movie theater, basically minimum wage, I could not afford Soylent every month. I could barely afford Ensure every month. Actually, you save a lot of money when you're not eating. That's fact. So I couldn't afford Soylent, but I was like, this is my dream. Something like I have all the nutrients, all the things that I would ever need, and I never, ever have to chew and swallow again. But until then, I just kept on going with Ensure. So maybe about a month into it, I still was not eating, and the Klonopin had helped none. I looked at the calendar one day. Oh, this is a UB brush, by the way. It's like a microfiber, but like, it feels like a muskrat. So at that time, the Klonopin was obviously not gonna be the solution, right? And I told them, I was like, it's not helping. And she was like, okay, cool. Reason why I went in to tell her it wasn't working is because I almost missed my appointment. I thought only a couple days had gone by and I woke up. It was like a whole nother month. So like the Klonopin made me lose time like crazy. I felt like a robot. I set an entire schedule. It's a whole thing. It's a different story. But I went into the doctor and I was like, okay, so it's not working. It's been a month. What do we do? And I was like, I don't want to be on it anymore if it's not going to work. And she's like, okay, well, we can start you on a weaning program, but it's going to take about 3 months to wean you off the Klonopin because it's a highly dangerous drug to just jump off of. And I was like, you're kidding, right? You're kidding. I've been on it for 30 days and it's going to take me 3 months. Also, my dad just lost his insurance. So I said, nope. So I went cold turkey, and then I sweated it out. Don't do that either. But that's a different story. So, back to the story we're telling. I had finally hit that time. 21 it was. And I discovered something magical. I figured out that if I was drunk, then I was able to eat. That fear was gone because I was free and loosey-goosey in probably the worst kind of way, but you know what I mean. At that point, I was drinking every single night. I would drink, and then I would walk to the corner of Hollywood Boulevard, and I would get a taqueria bean and cheese burrito. I did try to do meat one night. Couldn't do that. Not even drunk. Bean and cheese, squishy, easy to get in. The only issue was the tortilla. So I had done that over and over and over until I developed a little bit of a drinking problem. Just kidding. I had a drinking problem before that. But this did not help. Because now we have a physical addiction as well as the, mental addiction. There's so many funny different jokes that came out of that though. Like, to be honest, one of my friends, I met him for the first time. I had a huge crush on him. That's a different story. He said, "You're gay. How do you, Without even thinking twice, I was like, oh, that's easy. I'm not afraid of choking on it because there's a hole I can breathe through. I said it way funnier at the time. You're just gonna have to trust me. Yeah, so it took me a year. I moved back home because I was struggling with finances and stuff. And when I moved back home, I was at the point where I was pretty much just trying soft food. So beans, good. Eggs, good. Mashed potatoes, especially KFC mashed potatoes, because they literally melt, right? So those are my focuses, and I continued to do that, and I slowly introduced new foods, and I did do the exposure set therapy thing on my own, where I chew a little, swallow. And one day out of nowhere, it just snapped. Like, I was craving a hamburger, so I ate a hamburger. And I wasn't necessarily sober at the time, but I wasn't drinking just to eat. And it's really weird to think about it and look back on it, because I tell people and they don't believe me, or they just say, that's not even humanly possible, because it's so against our nature, it's so against instincts, that literally for a year, I did not eat food, like solids. I might have had 20 burritos in that time, but something is going on and you feel weird, you feel like nobody else in the world has this issue except for you. With something, know that you're probably not alone. There's probably a word for everything, including phagophobia is what I used to call it. More importantly, know that it can change. Sometimes it just takes time and your brain to reset itself and rewire. Also, there's definitely a good place for doctors and therapists in this, especially because if you are having trouble swallowing, it might not always be psychosomatic. So definitely get that checked out. No, before anyone asks, this is not the reason why I'm so skinny. I've always been this way, literally since junior high. It goes up and down really fast, depending on how sick I am, whether I'm eating or not. So, now that you know a little bit more about me, I feel a little exposed. We'll see if we even post this. No, so I'm gonna go do the bronzer in my next part of the Get Ready With Me. I have a new product to recommend, and yeah, catch that if you want. I'm gonna start putting these all together. Foundation, done. What do you think? A little whiter than I'd like it to, but that could be that bright-ass cool light, which one of my very kind subscribers got for me off my wish list. Foundation set, time for blush and bronzer next.